Are you drugging my grandchildren? The words slammed against the silence like a window shattering in a storm. I froze mid-step. That voice, Margaret's, was sharp, cold, and echoing through the marble foyer like a judge's gavel. There I stood, just 3 weeks into the job, holding Lily's tiny pink sock in one hand and my breath in the other. Walter Larimore, the tech mogul with sadness built into his posture, turned slowly toward me, confusion tightening his features. Margaret's face twisted with theatrical outrage. 4-year-olds don't go from screaming all night to sleeping like angels unless someone's sedating them. And this woman, she pointed at me like I was a stain on her polished floors, came here with no pedigree, no references, no explanation. I didn't flinch. Not because I wasn't scared. I was. But I knew this moment would come. I had anticipated it the day I stepped off the bus from Detroit and walked through the gates of this estate. I knew Margaret would try to protect her status in this house. What she didn't know was me. Mr. Larimore, I said calmly, looking straight into his eyes, if you're truly concerned about my methods, I suggest we install cameras in the girl's bedroom. You'll see everything. Her mouth opened, then shut. For a second, I saw the panic. A guilty person doesn't invite surveillance. But I just did, because I'm not here to survive. I'm here to reveal. And what happens next changes everything. Would you trust a stranger if your children suddenly slept peacefully? Or would suspicion win over gratitude? Let me know in the comments, because what you're about to hear might just flip your perspective. The silence after I offered the cameras wasn't just awkward, it was seismic. Walter's eyes lingered on mine a second too long, searching, questioning. He didn't say a word, but in that moment, something shifted. Margaret, still fuming, took a step back, muttering something about boundaries and standards. But I could tell I had rattled her. That was the first crack in her perfectly polished armor. Let me rewind for you. 3 weeks earlier, I walked through those gates knowing exactly what I was walking into. Lily and Lila had become infamous in the domestic care circles. 6 nannies had quit in less than 2 months. Some left crying. One ended up in the ER after Lila threw a ceramic elephant at her head. And Walter? He was a ghost in his own home, functioning but hollowed out, like someone who had learned how to walk around grief instead of the Ruit. The girls weren't monsters. They were broken. 2 little souls trying to scream through their pain. And I knew that kind of scream, because I used to scream like that too, after they took my brother away. The agency was desperate. When they called, I didn't hesitate. But I didn't take this job out of pity. I had a plan. You see, my credentials didn't make it onto my resume. I left out the PhD, the years at Detroit's Children's Trauma Unit, the clinic I used to run. I wanted to come in as just the nanny, because it's easier to see the rot when they think you're invisible. From the very first night I saw it. Lila refused to sleep unless she physically touched the door lock 3 times. Lily cried if the lights were off. Any light. They weren't just grieving. They were scared, stuck in an endless loop of what if and where did she go. That night I sat between them on the bed, whispering stories about star gardens and moonwolves. I let them lead the routine. I taught them to breathe in rhythm. I didn't medicate. I listened. And they slept. For the first time in 6 months, they slept. And now, that piece is being twisted into suspicion by a woman who's terrified of losing her control over this house. But what Margaret doesn't realize is I didn't come here to win favor. I came here to break the cycle. And no, I don't play fair. I play for justice. Walter's still watching me. Not with anger, with curiosity. I think he's starting to realize this nanny isn't what she seems. But that's only the beginning. Because the real story, the one that started years before this job, that's about to surface. Walter didn't say much that day, but that night I saw the cameras being installed outside the girls' room, quietly, without announcement. I smiled. He was curious now, half suspicious, half hopeful. And Margaret? She started moving like a storm cloud, hovering, watching, whispering into her phone like the walls weren't listening. I was, always. But I didn't need cameras to know what was going on. I had been documenting everything from day one. Not just for safety, for evidence. I knew this house held more than grief. It held habits, old, inherited patterns, passed down like fine china, but more dangerous than broken glass. The next morning, Margaret cornered me in the pantry. "You're clever," she said, eyes narrowed. "Too clever for your own good." I didn't respond. I just picked up the girls' cereal bowls and walked away, because I already had what I needed. I had recordings of the bedtime routines, of Lily whispering about the dream where she was falling, always falling, just like the stories of her mom's crash. I had footage of Lila checking each door 3 times before she could even close her eyes. These weren't tantrums. These were trauma responses. And I treated them, not with pills, but with something Margaret would never understand: compassion, knowledge, intent. That evening, Walter called me into the sitting room. He held his phone, paused on a video of me reading to the girls. Soft light, gentle voices, rhythmic breathing. "They're peaceful," he said, like he didn't believe it even as he watched it happen. "They trust you." I nodded, because I see them. Then I said something that made him freeze. "Lily wakes at 2:30, right? Always 2:30. The same time her mother died in the crash." He looked up. "How did you know that?" "And Lila, she won't sleep until every door is locked. Because the night her mom didn't come home, the front door stayed open." He didn't answer. He couldn't. Because I was right, and I wasn't supposed to know any of this. That's when I dropped the next layer. "Do you want to know what else I know?" I asked him quietly. "Margaret has been texting other nannies in the area, warning them, telling them not to apply here, saying someone like me doesn't belong." His jaw tightened. "And you have proof?" "I do," I replied. "And more than that, I have a reason for being here, one that goes beyond your daughters." That night, I knew I had tipped the balance. Walter wasn't just seeing me as the nanny anymore. He was starting to wonder who I really was, and why someone with my skill, my background, would step into a home already burning. He'd learn soon enough. Because this fire wasn't accidental. It was built on years of silence, and I had come to make it speak. The day I told Walter about the girl's nightmares wasn't just a turning point for him. It was a beginning for me. He looked at me differently after that. Not with suspicion anymore, but with something closer to awe. That quiet kind of awe that creeps in when someone realizes they've underestimated you. And Margaret, she doubled down, started dropping passive-aggressive comments about how some people were trained to manipulate, about how proper families needed boundaries, not therapy. I ignored her, but I documented it, all of it, because every step of this had been planned long before I ever stepped foot inside the Larimore estate. And now, it was time to tell the truth, or at least part of it. That evening, while the girls were out in the garden chasing fireflies, Walter asked me again, "Why did you really take this job?" His tone was softer now. "Open." I walked over to the mantel, picked up a framed photo of his late wife. Amanda, I believe her name was. Elegant, kind-looking, holding Lily in one arm and Lila in the other. She had the kind of smile that made you want to be better. "Your wife died 6 months ago," I said quietly, "around the same time your company let go of a promising architect named Devin Green." His eyes sharpened. "How do you know about Devin?" "Because he's my brother." Silence, heavy, confused, not yet angry. "And he wasn't let go because of performance," I continued. "He was let go after Margaret attended one of your firm's annual parties and told the HR director that Devin didn't quite fit the company image." Walter sat down slowly. "She doesn't have that kind of power." "She does," I replied. "Not officially, but you'd be surprised how much influence someone like her has. She knows who to whisper to, who listens, and in companies like yours, those whispers become decisions." I paused. Devin's wife was 8 months pregnant when he lost his job. They almost lost their home. He spiraled. It took us months to stabilize him again. Walter looked pale now. "So you came here for revenge?" "No," I said. "I came here for truth." I walked toward him, calm and deliberate. "Because this house, this family, is just a mirror of your company. The same rot, just dressed in nicer curtains." I handed him a folder. Inside were screenshots, transcripts, hiring data patterns, HR recommendations, all traced back to Margaret's suggestions. "This isn't just about my brother. This is about a system that rewards quiet prejudice. that elevates people who maintain the illusion of tradition by excluding anything or anyone that challenges it. He looked stunned, but he didn't look away. "And your plan?" he asked. I smiled faintly. "To let the truth speak for itself." The wind shifted outside. The girls laughed in the garden, chasing something innocent. Walter sat, folder in hand, the weight of generational silence pressing into his chest. And I stood there, not just as a nanny, but as the woman who had come to reset the scale. I knew once I opened that folder, there'd be no going back. So I waited until the girls were tucked in and the house had that hush. The one that always came after bedtime, but before the guilt set in. Walter sat at the end of the long oak dining table, hands folded like he was preparing for a eulogy. Margaret hovered in the hallway, close enough to listen, but far enough to pretend she wasn't. "Are you sure you want to hear this all at once?" I asked. "Or do you want it in pieces?" "Just say it," he replied. "All of it." I placed my tablet on the table and swiped. First, the audio recordings. "Let's start with this," I said, pressing play. His own voice echoed in the room. Small talk from a company dinner, laughter. Then Margaret's voice, casual but sharp. "He's talented, yes, but do you think our clients will feel comfortable with someone like that leading their project?" Click. Next file. "People from those neighborhoods often have ambition, but not the Polish." Click. "She's nice, but you have to think about long-term fit. Culture matters, you know?" Walter's face went from confusion to disbelief to something closer to nausea. "This is Margaret?" he asked. "Oh, we're just getting started," I said. I showed him emails where Margaret had quietly flagged concerns about employees who didn't align with the Whitmore brand. Some were dismissed weeks later. Others were never hired. I pulled up a spreadsheet I'd built over the past 6 months, patterns of promotion and termination. 72% of Black or Latino applicants either rejected or reassigned to less visible roles. Every case had one thing in common. Margaret had made a private recommendation. "You're telling me she's been sabotaging people based on race?" Walter's voice cracked. "I'm not telling you," I replied gently. "The data is." Then came the photos. Margaret at brunches with HR managers, whispering behind wine glasses. Screenshots from her WhatsApp group for elite housekeepers, where she warned others about me, called me a charity case from Detroit, speculated that I was here to trap a lonely widower. I let that one sit in the air a little longer. "She's been monitoring your staff decisions from inside your own home," I said, "influencing your perception of competence without you ever realizing it." Walter looked like a man seeing through fog for the first time. "Why would she do this?" "Because power doesn't always wear a suit," I said. "Sometimes it wears an apron and knows exactly where the pressure points are." That's when Margaret stepped forward. Her voice was shrill, desperate. "She's manipulating you, Walter. This is all a setup." "No," I interrupted. "This is the truth. And the difference between you and me, Margaret, is I came prepared for it." Walter didn't say a word. He just sat there, letting the weight of it all crush the illusion he had mistaken for loyalty. And in that silence, justice began to bloom. Margaret didn't crumble immediately. She held her chin high like a general refusing to surrender. "You don't have to listen to this nonsense," she hissed, her voice trembling with something between rage and fear. "I've given 15 years to this house. I've raised these girls." "You poisoned this house," I said calmly but firmly. "You didn't raise them. You limited who could." Walter stood slowly. His face was unreadable. Anger, regret, disbelief, all fighting for dominance. "Did you really tell HR to block my staff from hiring Devin?" he asked her. "Because he didn't fit the image?" "I was protecting your company's reputation," she snapped. "From what?" he asked. "From qualified professionals with the wrong skin tone?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence was heavy, honest. Margaret looked at me one last time and said, "This was your plan all along, wasn't it? You came here to destroy me." I didn't blink. "No, I came here to stop you." Walter took a deep breath. "Margaret, you're fired. Pack your things. Tonight." She froze. "You can't be serious. I trusted you. You use that trust to hurt people, he said. I won't let that continue. She didn't argue again. She turned, stiff as a statue, and walked out. For the first time since I'd arrived, the air in that house felt breathable. Later that night, Walter and I sat on the back patio. The garden lights glowed soft across the lawn where Lily and Lila had left their toys. He held a tumbler of scotch, but hadn't touched it. You could have taken this to the press, he said. Ruined me. I didn't want revenge, I said. I wanted awareness. You saved my daughters, he said quietly, and my company. I shook my head. I didn't save anyone. I created space for truth. It's up to you what you do with it. He looked at me. I want you to stay, permanently. Help us rebuild. Be part of the leadership team. You earned it. It was tempting, but I smiled and said, no. Why not? Because this isn't my endgame, I said. This is just one piece of a much bigger map. I showed him a proposal, one I'd written months before, a consulting firm built on identifying institutional bias and training leaders to recognize it before it festers. I want to take what happened here and scale it. Quiet change, big impact. Walter looked at the name at the top of the proposal, the Listening House. You already had this planned, he said. Not all of it, but I knew I'd find a story that needed telling, a truth that needed unraveling. We sat in silence for a while. Not the awkward kind, the cleansing kind. And for the first time, I think Walter realized that real strength isn't loud. It's quiet, intentional, and impossible to ignore once it moves. 6 months later, Lily and Lila sleep through the night without fear. Their giggles echo down the hallway like wind chimes in spring. Walter reads bedtime stories now, sometimes stumbling through the silly accents I once used. The house is warmer, lighter, like grief finally exhaled. But this story was never just about sleep or even justice. It was about awareness. Walter followed through. He launched an internal audit that led to 5 terminations and the reinstatement of 23 former employees. Blind hiring policies replaced backroom referrals. Leadership workshops are mandatory now. Margaret? She never returned to private service. The recordings reached all the elite families she once whispered to. Power built on prejudice collapses faster than sandcastles in the tide. As for me, Talia Green, I'm no longer a nanny. I'm the founder of the Listening House. We consult with hospitals, corporations, schools, anywhere silence has allowed bias to bloom. Devin, my brother, now leads sustainable development at Larimore Enterprises. His office overlooks a garden that children from all backgrounds help design. When I visit, the girls call me Aunt Talia. They show me drawings of stars and stories they wrote themselves. Stories with dragons and queens and black heroes who carry quiet power. At night, when I close my own eyes, I think of Amanda, their mother. I never knew her, but I think she would have wanted her daughters to grow up in a world where fairness isn't a favor. It's a right. This wasn't just a job. It was a window, and through it, we all saw who we really were. Some chose to change, others faded. But the truth stayed, and it's still speaking. Now the question is, are we ready to listen? Because sometimes it only takes one person with a plan and a heart full of fire to change the story for everyone else. So tell me, if it were you in this house watching from the hallway, would you have spoken up or would you have stayed silent? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Because silence protects the comfortable, but truth protects the future.